Mahayana, and Theravada. In both lineages, the Buddha talks about our relationship to animals and the fundamental question of the morality of eating them. In the Mahayana scriptures, the Buddha is unequivocal, addressing the subject in detail in the Lankavatara Sutra. For innumerable reasons, the Bodhisattva, whose nature is compassion, is not to eat any meat. Thus, Mahamati, whenever there is the evolution of living beings, let people cherish the thought of kinship with them, and thinking that all beings are to be loved as if they were an only child, let them refrain from eating meat. If, Mahamati, meat is not eaten by anybody for any reason, there will be no destroyer of life. Thus, Mahamati, meat eating I have not permitted to anyone. I do not permit, I will not permit.
There are many different quotes of the Parashas Buddha talking about different lives and not eating meat. One of the very strong statement that Buddha had is, I condemn meat eating in all means. I have never approved of meat eating. I will never approve of meat eating. And I do not approve of meat eating for my followers. For all sentient beings are equal to me like my only son.
The Buddha also addresses the subject of eating animal products in the Surangama Sutra. Bhikshus who do not wear silk, leather boots, furs, or down from this country, or consume milk, cream, or butter, can truly transcend this world. In the Theravadan scriptures, only a few passages address the subject of eating meat. In the Jivaka Sutta, the Buddha discusses a notion called the three purities, saying that monks are not allowed to eat meat unless they know the animal was not killed for them. Jivaka, I say that there are three instances in which meat should not be eaten: when it is seen, heard, or suspected that the living being has been slaughtered for oneself. I say that meat should not be eaten in these three instances. I say that there are three instances in which meat may be eaten: when it is not seen, not heard, and not suspected that the living being has been slaughtered for oneself.
So one of the monastic rules in Theravadan Buddhism is that monks are allowed to eat meat. And I think that was a very practical thing at the time of the Buddha, as I understand it, because of the simple concept, beggars can't be choosers. And we have these penniless, wandering vagabonds who need to sustain their bodies in order to carry on their Dharma practice. If they went from house to house and said, no, I have to have a special kind of food, no, don't give me that, it would have been much harder for the lay community to support them. So the Buddha said it was permissible for them to eat meat as long as they didn't know, hear, or suspect that the animal had been killed specifically for them. If they suspected that or knew that, then they weren't allowed to eat that meat. So I think what the Buddha was saying is that as agents, we shouldn't, where we have a choice, we shouldn't be involved in that chain of killing. Even though the bhikkhu had not done the killing and someone else had done that, it was still considered improper if it was killed with the bhikkhu in mind. In a modern consumer society, when we walk into the supermarket, one has to wonder, who have those animals been killed for? And as an average consumer, it often feels to me like they were killed with me in mind if I buy that meat. So an updated understanding of that could be in this modern consumer society. By buying meat and fish products, we're participating in that same chain of killing that the Buddha recommended against.
And so the rule was made that if you didn't kill the animal yourself, you didn't request it to be killed for you, and you are not aware that it was killed on your behalf, then karmically you are pure, because you were just wandering around through the villages collecting whatever people happen to want to put in your begging bowl. But in a situation where actually you are in charge of what you can eat, and you go into butcher shops and you buy meat, then in a way the very fact that you're buying it is saying that you are subscribing to the whole culture which rears meat to be killed for consumption. I mean, they only raise and kill these animals because people buy the meat. If we didn't buy it, that particular industry would die out.
That if somebody goes into a market, say on a Tuesday, and orders a piece of chicken, at the sales counter somebody will click some kind of calculator which will determine on Tuesday a piece of chicken was sold, which will send out a message for next Tuesday that we have to meet the same quantity of chickens to satisfy our customer base. So even though when you order the chicken on Tuesday, you're not responsible for the death of the chicken that's providing that meal on Tuesday, but in an indirect way, you can be sending a signal that next Tuesday a chicken should be killed to provide food for the customers.